What would happen if you stopped performing to what society wanted you to perform as and started really trusting yourself to make decisions based on your intuition in life and in business? Now, that is what my guest today for the Remote CEO Life podcast, Michèle, has been on. And in this episode, she shares how she went from burnout in working in journalism world to building a soulful business rooted in creativity, self-belief, and freedom. Now, listening to Michèle's story and having a conversation with Michèle in this episode really felt like I was looking at my future self, because we've been on very, very similar journeys. She even said it after we started recording that she felt like she was looking back at a younger version of her. So in today's episode, we're really going to get into the messy middle, the bold decisions, and what it really takes to build a life that feels good to live. So Michèle is a coach, she's a photographer and a guide for ambitious women and creative souls who are ready to stop second guessing themselves and build lives and businesses that feel free, aligned and authentic. She walked away from her job as a photographer at Belgium's biggest newspaper, and she rebuilt everything on her own terms. And not just once either, she rebuilt many times. And she went from teaching photography workshops in Nicaragua to children to publishing her own book, Love, Faith and Courage. And now she helps other people break out of performance mode and build businesses that support their lives, not the other way around. So we are super aligned in our mission. Let's get into the conversation. Hey, Michèle, I know you're in Belgium right now, but I would love to have a chat a little bit about your story, your background, where you kind of come from and where you are today.
Yeah, I am a coach and photographer. But actually, I didn't start with coaching. I started with photography, the love of my life. 17 years ago, I was working as a photo editor for the biggest newspaper in Belgium. And from the outside, it looked really fancy and people applauded me for my job, but I was just dying. I didn't feel that the blood was running to my veins and I couldn't proceed anymore. So 15 years ago, I decided to quit my job. And I started teaching street children actually in Nicaragua photography workshops. And it was just amazing. It was just the best decision I ever made. Um, my intuition really came into. I felt really called to do this. And actually, I can say that this was the base of everything I do today. Yeah.
I love that. And what initially called you to Nicaragua? Like, what made you go over that way?
Well, like I said, I'm really a person who strongly is guided by my intuition, and I knew I wanted to do something else. And actually, in 2010, you might remember the earthquake in Haiti.
Yes.
And that was the moment that I realized when I was sitting on my desk as a photojournalist, I realized, oh my gosh, the power of photographs is amazing because I saw the images coming in and, because of those images, tons of money got collected, right? So that was for me the sign to do something positive with photography. Yeah, that's how it all started.
I love that. And I completely relate to, having this dream job on paper. Like, I worked for luxury fashion brands for 11 years and had this really prestigious career and did really well and was successful on paper, or what like society would deem successful. You had the good job, you had the house, you had all of the things. But exactly what you just said, I was dying inside. It wasn't fulfilling me. It wasn't bringing me any joy. I was waking up anxious every single day. I totally understand what you're saying there, that you knew that there was more out there for you, and
Mhm.
you're going on this amazing adventure to Nicaragua and with a real purpose behind it. So obviously you followed your intuition. It really it really helped you, guide you on the path that you're kind of on today. So today, obviously, tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing specifically right now.
Well, right now I'm guiding ambitious women and creative souls,
Mhm.
and especially those who are they look confident on the outside, but inside they have self-doubt, they're a little shaky, they sabotage themselves, they overthink, or they slightly burn out. And why do I specifically help these? Because that was me as well. Um, and I help them to create actually into self confidence, freedom, clarity, and create a life that they truly want, that they love. Actually, yeah.
Amazing. That's very aligned with the work that I do. I also relate. That was also me. And, I think you are best placed to teach when you have already gone through an experience yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's amazing that you've been able to use your previous experiences and bring that into the work that you are doing today. And obviously, so many people come out of our 9 to 5s and are looking for freedom, and we start building these businesses. But so many people, and myself included, built a business that actually is just another job that takes them back to how they were feeling back in their 9 to 5 and gives them the self doubt and the burnout and all of the things. So, why do you think that happens so often? And how can we start breaking that cycle?
Well, it's not because, yeah, it's exactly what you say. It's not because you quit your 9 to 5 that automatically you will be free. You really have to, it all starts with yourself. And you really have to change something in you. It's not about changing your boss, becoming your own boss. It's changing how you operate. And it really is about living in the presence and really build your life and work from, yeah, like really um, aligned with who you are. And yeah, just being true to who you are. Sounds simple, but it's not at all. Yeah. It's been a long road for myself as well.
Tell me a little bit about your own experience with that, because I know obviously you said you're a very highly intuitive person. I also would deem myself to be a very highly intuitive person. So talk to me a little bit about how you personally used your intuition to guide you through that phase of your life and how you've kind of overcome some of those obstacles.
Well, to give you an example on my path back in the days, yeah, so I started out in Nicaragua and I had no idea what the next step would be. But I loved it, and actually I fell in love with the people out there. And then I came back, had my own exhibitions. I went back to Nicaragua, and actually, just by taking one step, the other step revealed itself. Um, but I also noticed that in the beginning, I really started out very smoothly. It was as if the universe was showing me, "Go on, girl, you're on your way." But then the more I really believe that the more you get into it, the deeper you go into your own path, um, the more obstacles, opportunities to grow you receive actually. So yeah, I went back at some point, and that time not as a slash photographer, but more as a journalist. And I knew when I did that, and I went back because political reasons, everything shifted in Nicaragua. And I knew when I was doing it that I wasn't really doing the thing that really I had to do. Um, and I ended up being arrested. And I ended up being kicked out of the country. And that was the end of my story in Nicaragua.
Wow. What
Mhm.
happened?
Yeah, well, I was one of the photographers one of the journalists who got kicked out because that's how it goes. When you shine a light on things that the government doesn't want to be seen, well, that's what they do.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah. So, but this was really, really hard, and I really had no idea. I thought, what is the next step now? I had no idea. So I did publish an article in the newspapers to let other journalists know what the possible outcome could be. And because of doing that, um, there was like a flood of information coming to me. Lots of people all over from Nicaragua, they were all reaching out. And funny enough, my initial projects I called my street children my heroes. And all of a sudden, the people in Nicaragua called me their hero.
Wow.
Roles got switched, but and thanking me for standing up and speaking out. Um, but yeah, nevertheless, I lost everything, so I didn't know where to go. But I became friends with one person from Nicaragua, and he lived in New York. And he said, "Why don't you come to New York?" And listening to my intuition, I felt like this is the next step. It didn't make sense in my head. Um, but I left Belgium at the time, and I moved to New York, and I started over again. And I eliminated everything. Yeah, starting from scratch. And I ended up living and moving all over the world for 8 years without just following my intuition one step after the other. And yeah, it just worked out.
Amazing. I think so many people have this fear of starting over and changing things in their life. I personally think if something's not changing, there's something wrong. um, in my experience, it's like or not necessarily something wrong, but you're probably very stagnant or a bit too comfortable in your situation if
Mm.
you're not growing anymore. And I think to grow, change is part of that. And the fact that you were able to go from an experience which was probably quite traumatic, getting arrested in in Nicaragua, and take that and trust that everything was just going to fall into place and follow the next step without it making much sense at the time, which normally happens, yes. You're like, but this doesn't make any sense. And then suddenly at some point down the line in a few months' time, it's so much clearer and you can just see, oh, that's exactly why I had to go and do this. So obviously you went on this trip around the world. Like when was the point that you looked back and was like, oh, this is why I was meant to be here?
Well, actually, it's interesting. Yeah, good question. Each time when you look back, um, the road makes sense, right? And it's very interesting because once you start that walking that path, it's just a continuation of those moments. I just come back from New York right now, and because I ended my journey in the States not intentionally, but I felt I I just I just traveled to Belgium to visit my family at some point, and my mom got ill when I was here, and then I felt like I have to stay, so I sold everything from a distance, and I stayed in Belgium, and now I just come back from New York, and it was a great way to look back into the past and close the adventure of the American adventure, and step into because when I look back, my traveling was actually coming home to myself. And the moment when I landed back in Belgium, I it was time for me. I came home literally and physically. So yeah, it's a very interesting journey. Yeah,
Mhm.
beautiful.
That is super interesting. I always wonder if that will ever happen to me because I've been traveling since I was 21, on and off, and then for the past nearly 4.5 years, full time. So but I have never wanted to live in the UK, honestly.
Mm,
And even as a kid, I didn't really want to live in the UK. So I always do wonder when I hear that story, I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'll ever get to that point. Because I also agree that travel is you coming home to yourself. And people always say, oh, you're running away from something. You can't run away from yourself. I'm sorry, but you cannot. And exactly what you mentioned earlier, like um the entrepreneurship piece is also like one of the biggest self-development journeys that you can kind of go on, and you're constantly going to be up leveling yourself and growing. And I think travel just escalates that like 10 times faster, to be
I
honest.
hear you. I hear you. And it's a very good point, Sophie. It's very interesting because I don't know if I'm gonna stay here, you know? It's not because I came back that I'm gonna stay here. Um, it might sound woo to others, but that's what I really believe. My soul just goes to a place. I got called to a place, and that gives me something to grow more rapidly. And that's why I've been moving so many times. It's just insane. It was just insane. But yeah, each place brought me something. And I lived in Spain before too. Just like you, I never thought Belgium is my place. And I mean, now I'm at peace with it, which is great.
Yeah,
But honestly, when you ask my brain, what's your favorite country? It's Spain. I lived in Spain. So now I'm rather thinking of living half time in Belgium, half time in Spain. Yeah, you're in Barcelona, and my heart jumps from joy just hearing Barcelona. So
yeah.
who knows? Who knows? And I don't need to know where I'm going to end up.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? Like, there's no such thing as, I don't think home is a place necessarily. I think home is like
Sure.
how you feel in yourself, how you feel in your environment, around other people, all of that. So exactly, you don't need to know. For now, you're meant to be there for the purpose. Obviously, you went back for your mum, which is an amazing thing to do, and then stay there for if regardless of the situation, as long as it makes you feel good to be there. Until it doesn't, then you'll probably move on again. And exactly what you said, every place has teaches you a lesson, gives you something, brings you a new addition to your life. Like, I don't actually live in Spain, I live in Thailand, but I'm currently in Europe, and I was in the UK visiting my family, and I was like, I'm going to go and visit my friends in Spain. So now we're here. And then I'll go back to Thailand very soon. But yeah, I agree with you. You don't need to know.
Hmm.
And I'm fascinated by people that stay in one place their whole life, honestly, because I just can't imagine. I just can't imagine doing it. But my parents have, do you know, like they've lived in their hometown their entire life. So it's not like I've come from this family of travelers or like had any influence around me to do this. It's just come off my own back because my soul is being called. I completely agree with you. It's not woo woo at all in my eyes, but your soul is being called to all of these different places, and you are able to experience all these different things. And I don't think the lifestyle that we've probably both lived is for everybody. I don't think everybody's cut out for that. But there is a certain type of person that has to have all of these experiences. And then going back to the work that you do, I'm sure you bring in all of those experiences that you've had into the way that you are now coaching people and going through that. And naturally, when you travel full time and you do restart your life over and over again, there is an element of survival mode in there. Like you're constantly, if you're starting over constantly, like I've been a nomad for 4 years before I settled in Thailand this year. And every few weeks, I was packing my bag up and having to find new friends and find somewhere to live. And where's the Wi-Fi? What am I going to eat here? Da, 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 all the things. And there is an element that you kind of stay in survival mode. So it is really nice when you're able to now I have a
Mm.
base in Thailand. It's really nice. And like you've got now a base in Belgium where you can just be like, okay, I've got my
Mhm.
friends, I've got my home, I know where I'm getting the Wi-Fi, I know what I'm eating today, like
Mhm.
all of these things. And it brings you out of survival mode. But for other people that are building businesses, traveling, and doing all of those having those experiences, I can totally see why there is an element of burnout in there, because it is very difficult to do all of those things and be
Mhm.
present and have rest, but also go and explore and do the adventures, run a business, have all of these things. It's so fast paced.
Mhm.
How do you recommend to your clients that they balance so many of these different things that they're juggling? And it might not necessarily be that they're traveling, they might just have a lot going on in their lives. How do you help people create that balance in their world?
Well, yeah, first of all, yeah, we work on the things that are blocking them, and eliminate that, and yeah, like prioritize a couple of things in your life that just to create a steady anchor to you. And that includes health, wealth, um, yeah, all the things, right? But also your thinking, which is big, and to be very present in the moment. When you're present in the moment, it doesn't matter where you are. You're not in the past, you're not in the future, but really here now. Then you're very, very strong in your mind, and then it's very easy to connect to who you are. Um, and also, yeah, no matter what happens, then you don't get out of your center. You really need to be balanced and centered. And especially now, even if you don't move around, there's so much going on in the world. And if you don't have the basics, yeah, it's gonna be a mess. And then it's very easy to start in overthinking, and you gotta I teach them actually to learn to fall back on themselves and trust themselves 100%. And
Mhm.
that is the basic. Like, really trust yourself.
I agree, because at the end of the day, we are the most trustworthy person to ourselves, and as long as we can learn how to show up for ourselves. How do you teach people to build that trust? Because I think there's because of the way the world works and the way we build relationships with people, there's so many opportunities for us to lose trust in our own decisions if something goes wrong, or we thought something and then it turned out to be something else. How do you teach people to come back and be like, okay, this is how you can actually trust that what your intuition's saying is true?
Well, a very easy thing, a very easy tool is to start with is really to actually, slowing down is key. Slowing down is key for everything. And really slowing down, and very easy, is coming to yourself. Just like we're sitting right now, just sit in your chair, straight back with your feet on the flat on the ground, and really take a deep breath. And then, really, before you take any decision, ask yourself: Is this? How does that feel? How does that feel? Because to me, embodiment is really important. Um, to get out of your head, and I really teach them to learn to use their body, not their heads, because your body always speaks. Your body knows the answers, and the question is, are you listening? So just close your eyes, take a deep breath, and then feel. Even put your hand on your heart, another one on your belly, and then feel, is that putting me into alignment, or is that gonna disrupt everything? That on itself is just a first step. Um, yeah, it doesn't take a lot of time. And yeah, I hand out lots of tools like this to really connect to who you are.
Yeah, I guess you have to get quiet for it to even speak to you, right? So to just get back into that stillness, get back into your body, get back into presence is a really important way to then be able to hear it. And how do you personally or teach other people to determine between like your head and your gut feeling, right? Like one thing I really struggle with for myself personally is I'm a very highly intuitive person, but I'm also a massive overthinker. So I really struggle sometimes between thinking, oh yeah, that's the right decision for me, but then my brain kicks in and the logic and fear and all of the other conditioning and programming that I've had over many years. How do you determine the difference between those two things?
Yeah, well, for example, I'm gonna give you an example that just happened not too long ago in my personal life. Um, I had a proposal of someone, my yoga teacher actually, she wanted to collaborate with me. And yeah, immediately my ego was flattered, to be honest. And I thought, yeah, we're gonna collaborate. But not everything. thing that comes on your path is something that is for you. So initially, I really, um, yeah, I thought, let's do this. But I just slowed down, and I let it land. That's what it works for me, not just reacting, but just taking a step back and let it just be there. And journaling about it helps me a lot. Um, and I realized this is not the person that I really have to work with. Although it seems like it's a huge opportunity to have more clients, more visibility, but that's not always true. That's your ego that tells you that, because the chatter in your mind is your when you're changing something, your ego's like, hey, 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 we're gonna do this. We've always worked like that, but yeah, is that really true? That is a really good question to ask yourself. Is that really true? What do I want now? Is this what I really need? So asking those questions will give you an answer. Are you overthinking, or are you listening to your gut? Because are
Yeah.
you making a story out of it, or is this what you really need to do?
Definitely. I think when we're naturally, as life is, fast in these fast-paced environments, we're making decisions very quickly. When opportunities like that come along, it can be really easy just to jump into them and say yes, just for the sake of the experience. And I, I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer.
Mm-hmm. You did.
Okay, so I read that not that long ago, and I made the mistake of thinking, oh, okay, he's saying yes to all of these things. I'm going to try that. So I went and took his theory of like just saying yes and surrendering to whatever. And I can't even remember what happened now, but like something happened and I was like, no, hold on a minute. I made that decision really quickly to say yes. I didn't sit and think about it. I just went all in because someone offered me it. It was obviously an ego thing. And afterwards I reflected and I was like, if I'd have just sat, meditated, thought about this, journaled on it for 5 minutes, there's no way I would have done that work. So I completely understand that situation. And I love that you took the time to step back. But I think the mistake that so many of us make is like we just think everything's urgent because we now live on such a fast-paced world and we can scroll and get access to everything that we
Yeah.
want in the world. We think that that's the same in our 3D world as well, and it's not. And it's so hard sometimes to be able to give yourself permission to slow down because we've been conditioned to go 100 miles an hour. But it's super, super important for so many different reasons, particularly when it comes to things where you are going to be partnering with somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
'Cause it,
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's really important to really, I think it's also about making a commitment to yourself, not to fall into the trap to organize your life to please others, but really live for yourself. And it might sound really egocentric for many people, but if you don't live for yourself, you can't live for others. That's just the way it works. So you really have to live for yourself. And from that state, you can give to others. And from that state, it will be reflecting your business as well. So that means also saying, okay, this is time to rest. This is time to do this. This is time to collaborate. This is a time to start something new, to try something new, not to be afraid of that. And just as you grow and evolve, l- letting your business, not being afraid of being, yeah, flexible in your life. I believe we are just nature, and there's no tree that is like, okay, it's raining right now. I'm just gonna collapse because it's raining, can't have it, or it's winter. I'm not gonna drop my leaves. Nature is adjusting all the time, and so should we. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I fully agree. My old business partner always says we have to treat ourselves like plants because we are a plant. We need to be fed, watered, and in the right environment to and get all of the nutrients that we need to be able to grow and thrive in our environment. So I fully agree. We are part of nature. We need to treat ourselves like part
Mm.
of it as well. And something that you mentioned in the form that you fill in, obviously, to tell me a bit more about you, is that you use sensitivity as a compass instead of a flaw. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, ho- I think many of like times are changing right now. We lived in a world where everything was very masculine, very driven from the head, and that is the thing that is changing. Now it's more the feminine part of us, and the feminine part is in everyone, in a guy and in a woman and a man. We all have both. Um, and that's what I believe is happening now. It's not working that way anymore, just simply the masculine way. So we have to develop the feminine part, and that part, in my case, I've I'm a sensitive. I'm a deep feeler. I would rather say I'm a deep feeler, and I've always been, and that helped me a lot in many ways. But also, it was intimidating. So now I really believe, working on that, I really believe that your empathic feelings, your senses are crucial. Crucial to build a life and a business aligned with who you are. Because yeah, you don't think just with your brain, but with your whole body. You feel it, you taste it, you everything. Um, so it's complete. And it's about trusting all those things that come for the fit. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I fully agree. I'm a deep feeler, and it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. So I fully understand with everything that you've said there, and really appreciate you sharing everything that you've shared today. Before we kind of wrap up and close the session, I would love to hear your version of what freedom means for you.
Well, freedom for me, ultimate freedom is making no compromises and just be you 100%. And just being so true to who you are and let that reflect in your life, in your business. Yeah, that's true freedom for me.
I love that. Fully agree. That ties into everything that I do. I love to help people actually figure out what it is that they are trying to achieve from their life and then build a business around their life rather than try and do it the other way around, which works maybe in the short term, but probably not in the long term. So fully agree with that. It's all about like really tuning into what you want and
Mm.
making that happen for yourself and advocating for yourself. So I love that. Thanks so much for sharing everything you've shared today, your stories and everything else around intuition and trusting and sensitivity. I loved all of it. Really resonate with your own journey. It's very similar to mine. So yeah, I'm excited to hear like about what happens next for you. Tell us a little bit more about the work that you're currently doing and how people could potentially work with you.
Well, like I mentioned before, I really work with ambitious women and creative souls, and I help them to turn down the self doubt, the overthinking, the questioning, your second guessing, and really step into a life and business that is aligned, authentic, and feels free. Like I mentioned before, I initially started out as a photographer, but and then I transitioned into coaching. But I do combine both still. One of my biggest moments was being afraid to be seen, and that's where my camera comes in. So I occasionally, when it works, depends on the sessions. I bring in my camera and take pictures, But I also take pictures of people, like coaching, portraits, um, embodied portraits where I combine everything in the coaching, but then you have something in your hands and then you feel it in a different way. So it's very complimentary. And I'm always here giving master classes, workshops. And people can find me on my website. Just gonna spell it quickly. I have a difficult name. It's Michèle Sennesael. It's MicheleSennesael.com. And they can find me on LinkedIn, clicking my name, and Instagram, same thing. So yeah. Thank you
Amazing.
so much for having me, Sophie. It's always amazing to talk to like-minded souls. So wonderful to have this conversation.